So, Bhikhu, one of the greatest challenges that faces Britain and many other nations is how to integrate communities, whether to integrate them or to take some other approach. Obviously, assimilation is a particularly popular view for some, particularly on the right, about how one deals with different cultures within one society. And I was wondering if you could say something about your view of assimilation, integration and so on, and maybe what your own approach looks like.
Yes, I think the basic question for me is this. When outsiders come in, how can they, A, be accepted as legitimate members of society so that their presence is not resented or frowned upon? And secondly, in the process, develop a common sense of belonging with the rest of the society. This is the problem. Integration, assimilation are simply means to that. The basic concern is when outsiders come in, how can we make them feel that they belong to this society, and society in turn recognizes that they belong to it. This kind of mutual sense of belonging. Now the question is, how do you encourage that common belonging? So rather than use terms like assimilation, integration, and then debate as to what they mean and what they really mean and all that, I would simply say that in order for common belonging to develop, certain things must happen. First of all, if you subject people to certain discriminatory treatment, then naturally they are not going to become part of your society. So the first thing is you remove discriminatory measures against them. That's one. Secondly, grant them equality of rights, which is very important because this is a recognition by the state that they are all citizens of this country in the same way that the others are. Thirdly, you encourage among them equal rights by themselves can simply means that people accept each other as equals, but that doesn't build any kinds of bonds between people. If you have the same rights as I have, we belong to the same community, but there are no bonds between us. So the bonds, especially emotional bonds, are built through common activities. So how do you encourage? Lots of common activities like interfaith network, sports. Sport in these days is a critically important activity. So encouraging formal and informal areas of associative life, cooperation, will be the third measure for me. And finally, of course, including and overarching them all is a certain sense of national identity. That each of them feeling that they all belong in their own different ways to a common entity called Britain, which makes them British, or France and therefore French. So this shared national identity is very important. So I would say, in answer to your question about developing common belonging, is through anti-discriminatory measures, equality of rights, cooperative life, cooperative range of activities, and finally a shared sense of national identity.
For many people that would look like an idea of a common good. And of course the traditional reaction to theories of the common good is that they are exclusionary, conservative, that they fit with assimilation. But your approach, I think, the common good in your approach is not of that type.
No, I see common good as a term which captures all these four. In other words, what does common good consist in a diverse society? And the answer is in developing a common sense of belonging among the people. And how is that developed? And the four measures I talked about come into play. So common good certainly will play an important part in my way of thinking.
And it's a fascinating and it seems to be increasingly popular view of that one has to find some notion of a common good that isn't exclusionary, that doesn't prioritise to the exclusion of all other forms of culture, a particular dominant culture. Certainly that's an area
yes,
where
I think
many of us are working.
Yes, no, I think common good becomes very important, and the reason why it is becoming, it is stressed more and more in public discourse, is that in a diverse society there is a danger that each group might turn in on itself, might look upon its own good as all that matters, and ignore the reality of the presence of other groups and their common interest and their good. And therefore, the notion of common good to remind each group that there is a larger community of which it is a part, absolutely important.
And of course, that type of common good is essential to the sort of redistributionist policies.
Yes, indeed.
That you must have if you're going to make this sort of society work.
Sure.
It takes a lot of resources.
Yes, because I think once you absolutely, this common good means that if your need is greater than mine, it should be met. If it is more urgent than mine, it deserves priority. And when this is done, the good of all, not just yours, but the good of my own good as well, long-term good, is promoted.
So what's called in the literature the burdens of judgment, the fact that we have to pay taxes in order to fund other people whose maybe culture we don't share, but we are sharing a common good together. We are part of one nation, and that requires sacrifice on the part of the individuals. And as you say, that's in many ways the most practically important aspect, it seems to me, in any theory of multiculturalism.
Sure, and that's an area on which you have written far more than I have. I mean, you are an expert on T.H. Green and British idealist, and you have thought so much about common good.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, it's fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you.